Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and this is my review of the solo mode of Ark Nova. I've played the game about half a dozen times only on the solo mode. I haven't even touched the multiplayer yet, so this is going to be a review of the solo mode only. I've filmed a complete solo playthrough. It's here showing in the background. Please go watch that. During this review, I'm going to assume that you've either watched that playthrough or you're familiar with the game. I really wasn't sure what to expect with this one. I had heard very little. In fact, I think I was under the mistaken impression that this was a heavier game than it really turned out to be. Maybe because, it was coming from Capstone. And really what I had heard was, comparisons to Terraforming Mars, which is obviously a hugely popular game, but I'm not quite as big of a fan of Terraforming Mars as a lot of other people are. I think I kind of had the hope here that maybe Ark Nova would fix some of the things that bothered me about Terraforming Mars, and I'm happy to say that I think that's exactly what this game has done. These direct comparisons to Terraforming Mars is a little unfair, just because there's a lot of similar DNA in there, but the games feel very different to me when I play. But I have to say, I like this so much more than Terraforming Mars for a couple of reasons. One, it just plays so much more quickly. It's streamlined, and even more important, it just flows so much better. When you play Terraforming Mars, especially if you're playing with the drafting, and you should, it takes a long time, and the flow of the game feels very disjointed the way it works. The gameplay feels really sort of herky-jerky to me. Ark Nova has completely done away with that, streamlined all of that stuff, and created a great flow. In the multiplayer game, you have these breaks that are sort of player-driven. They're basically just the end of the round, but players kind of manipulate when that's going to happen, and that's a big part of the game, that timing. The solo game does away with all of that, and instead you have this very regimented end of each round. You're going to do 7 actions, and then you're going to have a break. Then you're going to do 6 actions, have a break. 5 actions, have a break, so on. So it's much more determined and predictable, and that creates a more sort of puzzly feel in the solo game. And that's really one of the biggest differences between the solo game and the multiplayer game. Now, again, I haven't played the multiplayer games. I don't really know how that feels, that break system. It's one of the things I'm very interested in trying out. I'm kind of two minds about that. I'm not quite sure. I like the puzzliness of it, and I like having that control. But I also wonder if I wouldn't like a solo version that tried to incorporate that break system from the multiplayer game to add a little bit of that unpredictability. I don't know. I'm curious how that would work. The other thing that the solo game takes out that's present in the multiplayer game is that the solo game does nothing to try to simulate other players taking things that you might want, taking the cards or grabbing up one of those sponsor zoos before you got there, or one of the universities. Again, in the solo game, they're just out there, and you take the ones that you want, and it's very predictable. You don't have to worry about those things suddenly being gone. You can plan around them being there, and again, it adds to that puzzly feel where you're very much in control. Every time there's a break, you remove those front 2 cards and you cycle that display of cards, which is good. It's good that that flows a little bit, but it's not going to be flowing nearly as much as in a multiplayer game. And so it's much more about trying to make do with what you have, what's out there. Again, I like the puzzliness. I also wonder if I wouldn't enjoy some mechanism to try to simulate other players kind of getting in your way. I don't know. I'm not sure how I would feel. I would almost like there to be 2 different solo modes, like a puzzly version that's in the box right now, and then maybe some more chaotic version where there's an AI that is, acting a little bit more like a human player. Ultimately, I think I don't miss that, because not having to deal with sort of running an AI means that this solo mode is incredibly fast. You can play a game in 45 minutes tops. Not only that, I mean, the game sets up and tears down incredibly quickly. There's not that many components, or there are, but they're so nicely organized in these little trays that come with the game that you just take those trays out, and then you're just shuffling up that massive deck of cards, randomizing a couple tokens, a couple of cards, and then you're ready to go in like a minute flat, it seems like. Such a quick game to set up and tear down, which coming off the heels of Kanban EV and games like that was really refreshing. And then it plays in 45 minutes tops, and you feel like you've had a really meaty experience. It's not overly complicated. The rules are mostly very intuitive, and it just plays so quickly and so effortlessly in the solo mode. I don't mind that it doesn't feel like I'm playing against an opponent. Some people will. Now, some people will find this to be just sort of a puzzle, and that will be sort of a negative for them. For me, it's not. I love that. It has this addictive quality that makes me want to play it over and over and over again. And I love that there is, in fact, a win-loss condition because of having these two victory point tracks. A la Rajas of the Ganges is the first place where I saw that. Right, you have that appeal track and you have that conservation track, and they're going in opposite directions. And if they meet, you win. And so you can focus on getting a ton of appeal, or you can focus on getting a ton of conservation. And you can very easily adjust the difficulty by starting with fewer points, which drastically increases the difficulty because it also means you're getting less income every turn. It really makes the game more challenging. The other thing I love here is the card system. The first time I saw that was in that new Civilization game, Civilization New Dawn, I believe it's called. Has a similar sort of card system like this. I just love this. It works so well in this game. Creates fantastic decisions. And you're not just doing the action in the 5 space over and over again. Oftentimes I'm wanting to do a card in the 3 or the 2 space even, trying to set up a particular action, but you need that to get to the 5 space, so you got to do other actions to get it up there, or to get those tokens that let you, virtually increase the value of it. That's really cool. It just works great, and it creates a very such an easy game to play. You're not worried or bogged down by rules. You add all that to a fantastic theme. I thought the sort of photos on the cards and stuff would bother me. Usually that kind of bothers me. I want to have actual, artwork. But here it works well. I think it looks good. I sort of enjoyed looking at the pictures of the animals. That was nice. I think the one negative that I've heard from people is, about that giant deck of cards and just the randomness of the animals that come out. Like, will you be able to get the animals that you want, right? I was going for a bird strategy and just kept drawing and can't get birds, stuff like that. Because of that massive deck, you just have no idea what's coming out. It could be anything. And so the gameplay is extremely tactical. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to do a bird strategy, at the beginning of the game, and then just go with that, and then get frustrated that no birds are coming out. You just can't play this game like that. Oftentimes, you're going to draw from the deck, and you're not going to get anything that's going to help you. And you might have to do that several times. You might have to look at something that you draw and say, okay, I'm going to have to go with this now. And if you watch the playthrough, I think you're going to see there's been games of this where it's just been easy breezy. And, I've been able to just get exactly what I needed and put it all down, and just everything worked out very well. The playthrough on the channel is the very opposite of that. I was one step behind all the way through. Wasn't quite able to do exactly what I wanted to do, and was constantly having to shift and maneuver and tweak my plans because I just couldn't get it lined up right. Things weren't coming out that I needed, and I had to change course multiple times in that playthrough. Spoiler alert, it still worked out, but it was much more of a struggle. I think that playthrough illustrates very well what kind of mentality you need going into this. That deck is random, and I can totally understand how that could bother some people. I think there's a great joy and excitement in trying to work with that deck, trying to work with what you're given to make it work, right? This is much more about reacting to what the game is giving you, trying to make it work. That probably works a lot better in a solo game than maybe in a multiplayer game. I could see maybe if you're playing a 3-player game of this and, one player is just getting exactly what they need and having a nice, easy time, and you're over here struggling, that might be frustrating. Maybe it's the fact that I've played this as a solo game that makes me more forgiving of the randomness. Maybe it just works better in a solo environment. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. In fact, I think it works quite well here. I think it's put together in a way where whatever's coming out, there's always opportunities. There's always things that you can pursue. You're always making some progress, and as things come out, there's ways that you can make things work. I also really love the Polyamino little puzzle of your map, trying to get these different things, you know, ooh, this one needs to be at least a 4 size and it needs to be touching a rock, or this one needs to be touching 2 sources of water. You're covering up these things and getting bonuses. That all works really well. Again, there's nothing new here, right? We're cobbling together different mechanisms from, like I said, Rajas of the Ganges and Civilization New Dawn, right? The Polyamino thing we're seeing a ton of. We got quite a bit of Terraforming Mars in here, but it all comes together in such a fun and streamlined fashion. Believe the hype in this case. Ark Nova has absolutely jumped, right away into my top 20 solo games of all time, maybe top 10. As a solo game, this is one I'm going to be bringing out all the time. I just have really become enamored with it. And so Ark Nova is getting a 9 out of 10 from me. One of my highest recommendations. Definitely check this one out. Even if you're just a solo player, as long as you don't mind a kind of quick, medium weight, puzzly solo experience. And there you go. That's my review of Ark Nova in the solo mode. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.